Okay, so the government shutdown is finally over. That's the good news. The bad news, it's left us with a massive problem. We're essentially flying blind. All that economic data we rely on to understand what's happening, it's been totally disrupted, creating this thick fog of uncertainty. So the big question is, how do we navigate through it? Let's dive in.
And that really is the central question, isn't it? I mean, federal employees are back to work, so you'd think the fog would just lift. But it's not that simple. The shutdown didn't just hit the pause button on the government, it actually broke our economic dashboard. It's like we're trying to fly a plane, but all of our most important instruments are on the fritz.
And that's really the core theme here. The shutdown ending hasn't brought clarity. Honestly, it's done the opposite. For the next few months, the data is probably going to create even more confusion. So our whole strategy has to be about looking past all this short-term noise. First up, let's tackle the area that's causing the most anxiety right now, the job market.
Okay, let's jump right into the big one, the U.S. job market. This is where you can really see this major clash between the handful of facts we actually have and the very real fears that are just swirling around the market.
So what do we actually know for sure? Well, not a lot, but we do have a few solid, even if they're a bit dated, clues. For one, the September jobs report. That was all finished up before the shutdown. So that gives us a, let's call it a stale but still reliable starting point. On top of that, things like weekly jobless claims from the states and the private payroll reports, they were also pointing to a pretty stable market.
And this is where things get wild. The October jobs report is a total puzzle. On one hand, the fact is the government just stopped collecting the data. Seriously, we might not even get an official report. But on the other hand, you have the fear. The market is bracing for a report that, if it comes out, will be so distorted it could show a shocking, just jaw-dropping drop in jobs.
And just look at the scale of that distortion we're talking about, a potential headline loss of 1.5 million jobs. Now, let's be super clear. This is not because the economy suddenly fell off a cliff. Not at all. It's purely a statistical quirk, an anomaly caused by all those unpaid federal workers being counted as off the payroll while the survey was happening.
And this distortion, it slams right into the one number the Federal Reserve watches more closely than anything else, the unemployment rate. And you know why that matters, right? It's the number that influences their big decisions on interest rates, the rates that affect your mortgage, your car loans, everything. The survey they used to calculate it, it just wasn't done. So if they do publish a number, it could spike like crazy, just because furloughed workers might get counted as unemployed. It's a complete statistical black hole.
Okay, so if the big headline numbers are basically useless, where are we supposed to look for clues? Well, here's your guide. You've got to look under the hood. Focus on net private payrolls. That strips out all the government job swings. Keep an eye on consistent sectors like healthcare. Leisure and hospitality is a great one too. It's a good proxy for what upper-income folks are spending. And here's an interesting one. Look at the number of retirees. They're leaving payrolls, which makes job growth look weaker, but they aren't adding to the unemployment numbers. It's all about finding the signal in the noise.
All right, moving on from jobs. If you thought that was foggy, our next area of uncertainty, inflation, is a total black box. And I mean that literally. With jobs, at least some data was collected. For inflation, key reports weren't just delayed. The raw data wasn't collected. Period.
And this is what I mean by a broken pipeline. It's like a domino effect. Step 1. The government didn't collect the data for the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. Because of that, Step 2, they couldn't get the data for the Producer Price Index, or PPI. And the punchline? Step 3, the Fed's absolute favorite inflation gauge, the PCE. It's almost entirely built from those first two reports. So it just can't be calculated. The entire system is down.
You know, with the job market, we have a few other places to look for clues. But for inflation, not so much. There are very, very few reliable alternative sources. This quote really says it all. We are so reliant on that official price data, without the CPI and PPI reports, it is incredibly hard to figure out where inflation is heading.
And listen, don't think this is just a one-month problem that's going to magically fix itself. This delay creates a serious ripple effect. The reports for both October and November are now at risk. They're going to have to rely way more on assumptions and models than on hard data, which means the quality of our inflation numbers is going to be questionable for months to come. But here's the thing. Just because the official data is missing doesn't mean inflation has gone on vacation. The real-world pressures are still building up. We're already seeing the early impacts of tariffs showing up in sectors like apparel and home furnishings. The key for us is to watch these underlying trends, even if it's going to take a while, maybe not until the 2026 holiday season, for those costs to really pass through to us as consumers.
Okay, that brings us to the final and biggest piece of the puzzle, GDP, gross domestic product, our broadest measure of economic health. And you guessed it, just like everything else we've talked about, the picture for the fourth quarter is going to be seriously distorted.
This table really breaks it down for us. In the fourth quarter, you've got unpaid government contracts and less federal spending. Both of those are going to drag the GDP number down, making the economy look weaker than it probably is. But then, fast forward to the first quarter of next year, and you'll see this artificial rebound as all that activity comes back online. It just adds even more noise to the system.
So, the million-dollar question, when do we finally get out of this fog? Well, don't hold your breath, it's going to take a while. The general consensus is that we probably won't get a truly clean read on the economy, one that's free from all these shutdown distortions, until the data for the second quarter is released next summer. Yeah, July 2026.
So let's pull all this together. After digging into jobs, inflation, and GDP, it's pretty clear we're in a tricky spot. So how in the world do we navigate this? Let's recap the strategy for seeing that bigger picture.
First things first, let's put a name to what we're all dealing with. We're calling it data fog. It's this period of really high economic uncertainty, where the official stats are just too distorted, too delayed, or just plain unreliable, and it forces us to shift our focus to the broader, long-term trends. So, here it is. This is your takeaway strategy for dealing with the fog. Number 1, look to 2026. Focus on the long-term story, which is shaping up to be persistent inflation and slower growth. Number 2, just ignore the noise from Q4 and Q1. Mentally write off that data because you know it's going to be heavily distorted. And number 3, watch the real trends, not the flashy reports. Keep your eyes on those underlying pressures like tariffs and private sector job creation.
So to end on that big question, with all this unreliable official data, are we all just flying blind into 2026? Well, maybe not completely blind. As we've seen, we have some alternative instruments we can use to guide us, but there is absolutely no doubt that for the next several months, we're all going to be navigating this economy with a whole lot less visibility than we're used to.